Moomin Papa and Moomin Ch3 were out fishing. And remember the picture of them fishing at dusk? And they saw something. They didn't know what it was. They heard it making a noise, and it flew. And they went home, Moomin Papa, Moomin Ch3. And then Moomin Ch3 woke up in the middle of the night. He lay listening. Someone had called him, but he wasn't quite sure. Perhaps he had only dreamt it. The night was just as calm as the evening had been, full of blue-white light. And the moon was high over the island. Moomin Ch3 got out of bed as quietly as he could to avoid waking up Moomin Papa and Moomin Mama, and went up to the window, opened it carefully, and looked out. Now he could hear the faint sound of the waves breaking on the beach and see the dark rocks floating in the sea, forlornly, kind of sadly looking. Far away, a bird called. The island was completely at rest. No, not at rest. Not entirely. Something was happening down on the beach. The distant fall of hurrying feet. Something splashing in the water. Something was happening down there. Moomin Ch3 became intensely excited. He was sure that whatever it was concerned him. Only him, and none of the others. He must go down there and see for himself. Something told him that it was important, and that he must go out into the night and see what was happening down there on the beach. Somebody was calling him, and he must not be afraid. When he was by the door, he remembered the stairs and hesitated. The winding stairs at night that were an awful thought. In the day you could run up them, not giving yourself time to think. Moomin Ch3 went back into the room and took the hurricane lamp off the table. He found the matches on the mantelpiece. The door closed behind him, and the tower opened up below him like a deep, dark well. The tower. It opened up like a deep, dark well. He couldn't see it, but he knew the stairs were there. The flame of the hurricane lamp flickered, rose and fell, and then burned steadily. He put it down and plucked up courage to take a look. The light had frightened all the shadows, and they fluttered giddily all around him when he lifted the lamp up. So many of them, fantastic shapes, flickering up and down the hollow inside of the lighthouse. It was beautiful. The staircase wound downwards, down, 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 gray and fragile like the skeleton of some prehistoric animal, and was lost in the darkness at the bottom. With every step he took, the shadows danced on the walls all around him. It was much too beautiful to think of being frightened. So Moomin Ch3 went down the stairs, step by step, holding the lamp tightly, and reached the muddy floor at the bottom of the lighthouse. The door creaked as usual and felt very heavy. He stood outside on the rock in the cold, unreal moonlight. And he thought, isn't life exciting? Everything can change all of a sudden, and for no reason at all. The staircase is suddenly quite beautiful, and the glade something I don't want to think about anymore. Why do you think he doesn't want to think about it anymore? Do you remember the last time he talked about it with little Mai, and she said she'd fix it, and he didn't ask her how? Maybe that's worrying him. Maybe he's worried about the ants. I don't want to think about it anymore, he said. Breathlessly, he walked over the rock, through the heather, through the little copse of aspens, They were motionless and quiet now. There wasn't a breath of wind. He walked slowly, listening. The beach was quite quiet. I've frightened them, Moomin Ch3 thought, and bent down to turn off the lamp. Whatever it was that comes here at night must be very shy. An island by night can be very scary. Now the lamp was out, and immediately the island seemed to come much nearer. He could feel it very close to him as it lay there motionless in the moonlight. He wasn't at all frightened, but just sat there listening. There it was, the sound of prancing steps in the sand somewhere behind the aspens. Backward and forward they went, down the beach, into the water, splashing about and making the foam fly. It was them, the seahorses, his seahorses. Now he understood everything. The silver shoe he had found in the sand. Remember that? The calendar with the moon dipping its feet in the mountain wave. The call he had heard while he was asleep. Moomin Ch3 stood in the trees and watched the seahorses dance. They leapt up and down the beach with their heads high, their hair flying, and their tails floating behind them in long, glistening waves. They were indescribably beautiful, and they seemed to be aware of it. They danced freely and openly, for themselves, for each other, for the island, for the sea. It seemed to be all the same to them. Sometimes they turned suddenly in the water so that the spray rose high above them, making rainbows in the moonlight. Then they could leap back through their own rainbows, looking up and bowing their heads to emphasize the curve of the neck and the line of the back down to their tail. It was as if they were dancing in front of a mirror. Now they were standing still, stroking each other, obviously thinking only of one another. Both were wearing gray velvet, which looked very warm and soft, and which never got wet. It looked as if it was patterned with flowers. While Moomin Ch3 was watching them, something curious but quite natural happened. He suddenly thought that he too was beautiful. He felt relaxed and playful and light of heart. He ran down to the beach crying, "Look at the moonlight, it's so warm, I feel I could fly." And the seahorses stopped. And they reared and sprang away in the moonlight. They dashed past him with their eyes staring and their hair streaming and their hooves beating the ground in panic. But he knew all the time that they were only pretending. He knew that they weren't really frightened. And he didn't know whether he ought to clap or try to calm them down. He just felt small and clumsy. And they flew past him into the sea, and he shouted, "You are beautiful. You are so beautiful. Oh, don't leave me." A cloud of spray rose in the air. The last rainbow disappeared, and the beach was deserted. Moomin Ch3 sat down in the sand, and he waited there. He felt sure that they would come back. They were certain to come back if he was only patient enough. The night passed, and the moon was going down. He thought, perhaps they would like to see a light on the beach, a light to tempt them back here to play. He lit the hurricane lamp and put it in front of him on the sand, staring intently at the dark water. After a while, he got up and began to swing the lamp backward and forward. It was a signal. He tried to think of only ordinary, soothing things and went on swinging the lamp. He was very, very patient. The air began to get cold, perhaps because morning was near. The cold floated in from the sea, and Moomin Ch3's paws began to freeze. He shivered and looked up, and there was the Groke, sitting on the water in front of him. Her eyes were following the movement of the hurricane lamp, but otherwise she did not move. He knew she would come nearer. Moomin Ch3 didn't want to have anything to do with her. He wanted her to go away. He wanted to go away from the coldness and the motionless of her, far away from the terrifying loneliness of her, but he couldn't move. He stood there swinging the hurricane lamp more and more slowly, Neither of them moved, and time began to drag. In the end, Moomin Ch3 started to walk backward very slowly. The Groke stayed where she was on her little island of ice. Moomin Ch3 went on walking backward without taking his eyes off her. Up the beach, into the aspen trees, he turned the lamp out. Everything was dark. The moon had gone down behind the island. Was that a shadow moving across the water? He couldn't be sure. Moomin Ch3 went back to the lighthouse, his head full of things to think about. The sea was quite calm now, but in among the aspens, the leaves whispered with fright. He could smell paraffin strongly, or wax, coming from the thicket. But it didn't seem to belong to the island somehow, or to the night. Moomin Ch3 said to himself, I'll think about that tomorrow. I have more important things on my mind now. And that is the end of chapter 3. Okay, sweetheart, good to see you the other day. Tell your mom and dad hi. I love them. I love you too. And I hope that the temperature in New York is not like the temperature in Denver, which is below 0. I'm going to go turn up the heat. Talk to you later. I love you, sweetheart. Bye.